Families remain one of the most important institutions of society. And when we're talking about social institutions, it is one of the central institutions that need an examination. Our focus will be on two principal areas today. One, we want to understand what is meant by family. And then secondly, the various types of families that exist. It is an important discussion because it forms the basis of our study of what social institutions are and the important role they play in society. It is an important discussion, so pay attention as much as you can. We want to begin by making some general observations about the institution of the family. It is observed that family is the oldest and most conservative of all the social institutions, and sociologists also consider it as the institution upon which all other activities that occur in human society revolve around. To sociology, therefore, families are understood as institutions that perform important functions such as reproduction, nurturing, socialization, taking care of the weak or frail, the elderly, and other special populations such as children and persons with disability. In addition, it is considered to be an institution that provides labor that is needed for the economy, both at family and societal level. Besides, families are important in providing the emotional needs of its members, especially when they are sick, when they are bereaved, when they are depressed, or when they are undergoing certain experiences that requires closeness with other members of society. So at that point, families become extremely important in the provision of psychosocial support to members of society. What then are families? Several definitions of the concept family or the word family exist, but the one that is most preferred by sociologists because of its comprehensiveness is one that is provided by a sociologist going by the name Kendall. In 1999, Kendall defined a family as a relationship in which people live together with commitment, they form an economic unit, care for the vulnerable, and consider their identity to be significantly attached to that of the group. Family can be described in two forms. One is a social entity, and secondly, as a social institution. When we conceive a family as a social entity, we are recognizing the fact that they are socially created and defined, and they also vary across cultures. In other words, families are not physical. We cannot subject them to the human senses, the 5 human senses, but we can observe them. Rather, we cannot observe them. That's why we are saying that they are created in the mind of man because of the important functions that they fulfill. Again, when you talk about families as social institution, we also appreciating the fact that families they exist in all societies. However, they may differ in terms of what they are and in terms of how well they're important, how well they're constructed, and how well they're perceived from one culture to another. But we also look at family as social institutions, which mean that they have important roles that they play in societies. So when we talk about family as a social entity, we are simply concerned about their existence and the perceived differences in terms of how important they are and the vital role they play in society, and also the differences in terms of their level of development from one culture to the other. It's also important for us to recognize at this level that there are two forms of families. One, family of orientation, and then secondly, a family of procreation. A family of orientation is one in which a person is born and in which we experience early socialization. And also, it comprises of the individual and his or her siblings and parents. Then we have what we call family of procreation. This is a family that a person forms upon getting married and getting married and having children. So the family that an individual performs when he or she is married is the one that we call family of procreation. It means, therefore, that upon marriage, an individual has two families at the same time. One, family of orientation, that is the one in which he was born, and family of procreation, that is the one in which he or she performs, the other forms upon marriage. There are various types of families, some of which we want to look at in this discussion. The first type of family that we want to look at is nuclear family. A nuclear family is one that includes two married parents of opposite gender and their biological or adopted children living in the same residence. They are more common in the developed world and also in urban areas because of the desire for an improved lifestyle, freedom, and harmony. They have certain advantages over other forms of families, especially extended family. One of them is that cases of conflicts are generally reduced in nuclear families. Again, there is also a sense of greater personal responsibility in terms of what each individual is meant to do. There is also possibility of harmony and peace at family level. Again, given the limited number of children, there is also possibility that the status of children and women in such a family is better compared to, say, extended family, where the number of individuals is quite huge and sometimes it becomes difficult for family members to adequately cater for their essential needs. But there's also the downside of extended families. For instance, they may experience some disadvantages. For instance, neglect or abuse of widows and the elderly. Because once that happens, the broader protection that women ought to enjoy is not there because of the limited number of members within that particular setup. Children may also face neglect, especially where parents are working away from home. This is because the limited membership might not take care of the broader needs of the children, as opposed to extended family, where there are so many people who get involved in their bringing and socialization of the child. There could also possibility of economic loss due to individualization of property. Indeed, people own property as individuals, and therefore the aspect of individualism as opposed to collectivism might mean that those who have property might have it, and those who do not have might completely not have it, because there is no shared feeling, and therefore the norms that pressurize individuals to share the little they have with other members are non-existent in such kind of setting. Again, loneliness might be experienced in the event of death of a parent or spouse. This might not be the case with extended family, whereby the sense of communalism and a sense of belonging can cushion individuals who have lost their spouses or who have lost their parents. So those are some of the disadvantages that we find with the nuclear families. The other type of family is called extended family. An extended family consists of several generations of people who live in the same residence and also share resources. Indeed, it comprises of several nuclear families with complex networks. It includes grandparents, sometimes great-grandparents, the parents, the grandchildren, the cousins, parents-in-law, daughters-in-law, quite several. So it is one of the most complex families with extensive social networks. Like the case of nuclear family, it also has certain advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages that has been cited by sociologists is that the existence of multi-generational bonds and greater resources increase the ability to provide for the children's needs. That is, there's great attachment between different members of generation. For instance, grandparents and their grandchildren. The bond is quite strong, and in that case, it is easier for children and the elderly to receive care from members of the family. Again, there's greater emphasis in sharing of resources rather than private or personal accumulation of resources or wealth, as we noticed with the nuclear families. Extended families, also with strong kinship bonds, can also serve as a lifelong buffer against stressful transitions, such as in cases of sickness, death, among others. Because of the broader sense of social belonging, it is easier for people who have lost their parents or who have lost their spouses to receive care from the other members that are still alive. This is because of the strong kinship bonds that characterizes most of the extended families. But again, extended families also have certain drawbacks. For instance, there is a feeling that sometimes people stop to attend to personal needs, and instead they focus their resources to the general needs of members of the extended family. And this one might inhibit personal development or personal efforts towards the eradication of poverty at a family level. Again, there is also a sense that sometimes inability to provide care or to attend to the needs of other members of the extended family might be perceived as others as a sign of disloyalty, which in essence might lead to social rejection or ostracism. Again, extended families, they also face with the problem of having to negotiate the expectations and needs of family members. Indeed, especially where resources such as land are being shared by the entire membership of the extended family. Each family must fight for its space because of the fact that resources are owned commonly. It is sometimes difficult to negotiate for the provisions that goes to specific members of the family. Lastly, the complex and family relationship can also distract from the parent-child relationship, which may undermine parental authority over the children. Indeed, because of the fact that uh, several members of the family, of the extended family, are involved in child socialization, sometimes the parental authority over the child misses out because uh, the responsibility of taking care and socializing the child belongs to the entire family. In some cases, their bringing could be good, but in some cases, there are instances where some members of the family might not be might not be up to any good to some children, and the process, therefore, they might end up misleading such children. The overall result is that parents of their affected children might not have direct or specific control and authority over the children. So managing such children sometimes become quite difficult. The other type of family is called monogamous families. By monogamy, we mean a type of marriage whereby a person is allowed to marry only one partner, and it may exist at three levels. That is classical, social, and serial monogamy. Social monogamy is a situation to which a couple, or refers to a situation in which couples live together, they have sexual relationship, and they also cooperate in acquiring basic resources. While serial monogamy is a form of monogamy in which couples or spouses have only one sexual partner at any one time, but have more than one in their lifetime. For instance, a person marries today, they divorce, again he marries, they divorce, again another marriage. But at any one point rather, the person has only one spouse. But in his or her lifespan, he has several spouses. That's what we mean by serial monogamy. Then we have what we call classical monogamy. This is whereby people marry at a much younger age when they are virgins, and they remain sexually exclusive in their entire lives and become celibate upon the death of the partner. In other words, when we talk of classical monogamy, what we mean is that once you marry, first you marry when you're virgins, and once you marry, you remain only with that partner. Even when one of the spouses dies, you are not allowed culturally to marry another person. You remain so. That is the meaning of a classical monogamy. Critics of this type of marriage have seen it as a marital structure or system that is designed to oppress women and burden people with unrealistic expectations of lifelong sexual monogamy. In other words, what they're saying, what critics are observing here is that it is unfair to insist that people remain in this form of relationship even when they are not satisfied in terms of these relationships. So they find it as a source of burden and a hindrance to the progress of women. But proponents or those who support it argue that it promotes women equality and provides a context to deepen trust as well as intimacy. The other type of family is called polygamous families, or in polygamous family, let's first begin by understanding what polygamy is. Polygamy is a marriage that permits a person to have more than one spouse. Any marriage that allows an individual to have more than one spouse is what we call polygamy. And polygamy can be divided into two. We have what we call polygyny, and then we have what we call polyandry. Polygyny is a form of marriage in which one man marries more than one woman at any given time. Again, we can further divide or categorize polygyny into what we call sororal and non-sororal, as well as co-polygyny and heart polygyny. Sororal polygyny is a type of marriage in which the wives that are married to a single man or to one man are biological sisters or they are very close relatives. For instance, a person A has two wives, and those two wives are either biological sisters or very close relatives, such as cousins. Then when you talk of non-sororal simply means that the two wives that are married to one man are not in any way related to each other. In other words, they are not relatives. Then we have what we call co-polygamy and heart polygamy. Heart polygamy is whereby all the wives are settled in different home states. That is, you have, say, one or two wives, rather you have two or three wives, but each of them, you have constructed for them, they are separate home states. And when we talk of co-polygamy, rather co-polygyny, it means that all the wives, they live in the same compound. Then, as I noted, we noted earlier, then we have what we call polyandry. Polyandry is a marriage whereby one woman is married to several men at the same time. Again, this form of marriage can be divided into two, that is fraternal and non-fraternal polyandry. Fraternal polyandry is a case or a situation in which the woman is married to two or more men who are biological brothers or very close relatives. Then when we talk of non-fraternal, it means that the woman is married to several men who are not in any way biological brothers. There's a type of family called patrifocal family. A patrifocal family is one in which the father takes the lead role in making decisions and raising children. It occurs in cases where the mother is not present due to a number of factors, such as abandonment of the family, mental incapacitation, or death. That case, the vacuum left, the man now fails fully. Again, it's also common in polygamous societies where women remain involved with their spouses for a relatively short time. So when you talk about patrifocal family, it's a type of family in which much of the responsibilities in taking care of children and major decisions that affect the family lie with the father. The other type of family is called matrifocal family. This is a family structure whereby the mother takes lead in taking care of the family and upbringing of the children. The children, in this case, are the biological offspring of the mother, although in some cases the children may be adopted either from other family members or from government agencies. So this kind of family is common where women have the resources to rear their children by themselves, or where men are more mobile than women. For instance, there are cases, say, where a man works abroad and rarely interacts with children, and it is the mother that is with children much of the time. A family is also for matrifocal, again, when it's centered on the man and her children, and the father, who is intermittently present in the life of the children, occupies a second place. In other words, the greatest responsibility of childcare and socialization, as well as major decisions that affect the family, is primarily borne by the mother. These families, they are becoming quite common, especially in the West. In the West, where women empowerment, access to education, participation in labor is becoming extremely high. The last type of family that we want to look at is called blended families. These are families whereby two separate families have merged into one through several different ways, such as divorce or death of one spouse. The families can be divided into simple reconstituted families and complex reconstituted families. Simple reconstituted families are those in which only one parent has prior children, while complex reconstituted families are those in which both parents have prior children. Some of the strengths of these families include children being cared for by two parents. There's also possibility of strong bonds being developed between new siblings or step-parents, and also the benefits of having resources from two sources or incomes from two sources. However, there are several weaknesses in these families because of the difficulties in creating an environment that is conducive to both parents and their children. Again, there could also be problems of discipline of children. Sometimes a man or a woman might not have a stronger say in the children that he or she did not give birth to. Such fears are normally there, especially in the African context, for mothers who are married and they had children prior to marriage. Sometimes there is fear that either the children might not be accepted fully, or the man might feel that the mother might not feel okay when he or she, rather when he stamps his authority over the children. It is a family type that is still relatively new, among the African societies, but it is emerging as one of the major forms of families in the developed world. So up to that point, we come to the conclusion of our discussion today. Kindly, any issue that you file should be noted down. Rather, any issue that you feel you need more clarification on should be noted down so that you can raise it when we have our physical classes. Thank you.